Greetings, everybody. My name is Peter Giuliano. I'm with the Specialty Coffee Association, and welcome to this third in our webinar series around the COVID-19 pandemic and how businesses can respond. So let me just do a quick introduction. In March, we conducted a survey on the way COVID-19 was impacting coffee businesses, and our goal was to try to quantify the effects that COVID-19 was having on the specialty coffee industry. The results of that survey were really stark and sobering, but it became clear that those who were more optimistic in the face of the crisis were doing a few key things. They were focused on online sales, they had shifted to pick up and take away, they'd emphasized communication, and they'd explored grocery and home delivery. So this webinar will focus on the second of those strategies, which is shifting a coffee shop into a walk-up and takeaway business. And you can, if you want to, you can go back to previous webinars, which are recorded and cover some of the other topics. So joining us today are a couple of retailers who've worked hard at making this shift and are transforming their businesses during this time. So today what we're asking ourselves is, how can businesses shift to walk up and take away business in this time of social distancing and infection concerns? And what are coffee shops doing to shift to a system that emphasizes safety for both customers and workers? And how can we communicate this style of business to our customers? So joining me to co-host this webinar is Scott Callender from La Marzocco. Hey, Scott.
Hi, everyone. Thanks so much for joining us, and thanks for being here with us. Obviously, this is a really deep topic with lots of different areas to cover. So to try and organize our thoughts and to organize this discussion, we've split it up into two different sections, now and the future. So we'll be looking at what are some interesting things that people are doing now, and then how do we think that this is going to affect the future of coffee shops and the future of the coffee industry. So with us today, we have two people who are doing some really interesting things and are experts on this topic. The first one is Nick Cho, who is a co-founder of Wrecking Ball Coffee. Say hi there, Nick.
Hi there, Nick.
And we also have Erica Escalante, who is the owner and boss lady at Arrow Coffee House. And she is joining us today over the phone, so we don't have video for her quite yet, maybe in a little bit, but say hi, Erica.
Hi.
So thank you so much, both of you, for joining us. The way that we have decided just to kind of begin is to take a look at some pictures and some ideas that both of these people are implementing into their businesses. And Peter's going to walk us through a few ideas here with Nick and Erica.
Yeah, great. Yeah, so we asked both Nick and Erica to provide us with some slides with pictures of what they're doing. So you can see on the screen here that we have a few slides. So the first are from Erica. So Heather, can you go ahead and go to the first slide here? Heather, are you able to advance the slides? There we go. Okay, so I don't know if you can see your screen, Erica, but we've got a few slides from you. Yeah, there we go. Okay.
Okay.
So go ahead and proceed, Heather.
Okay. Yeah, so this is the front of our coffee shop. We're on a main intersection in Northeast Portland. We have a parking lot in the back of the building. So this is our front door, which is in the corner. And as we were deciding on how we can stay open, we decided to have a walk-up scenario. So one of the main issues that I've heard from my employees and from myself is that having people near us waiting around was very stressful. And so we didn't want to, like, I think the very last day we were open, someone like wiped their nose and we just felt weird. So we decided that we needed to separate ourselves from people completely. We did not want to take their money. We did not want to take their cards. We did not want to be near them. And so we decided to not let anyone inside of our cafe. And our setup, our bar is nowhere near the door. And so for the first couple of days, we were running to the front door over and over, just popping over, what's your name? Okay, running back to the bar, grabbing their order and bringing it out. But so we decided, I said, hey, I bet I could buy a drive-through box and put it at the front door so that we can have a microphone at the bar and we can talk to people outside. So what you're seeing here is on the left side, we made a new A-frame sign that says like that we're open, that we do delivery. And then the next slide probably has a better view of our speaker box setup. So there's our front door. So we had just this menu signage frame already in the basement that I had found on the side of the road. I designed new posters to go inside, and you can see right there in the middle is a speaker box, and that is an actual just drive-through speaker box. It was about, I think it was $500 to $600. I had it shipped overnight, and we just wire it under. The wire goes under the door, around the corner, and all the way to our bar. It's a very long wire cord, and it hooks up to a microphone on top of the espresso machine so that when people come up to the door, we can say hello, we can talk with them, get their name for their order, and hand it out. And so it gives us a barrier between people. We are still able to open the front door just to hand off their order. But that's kind of the system we decided to go into. You can see too, also behind the door, I put up all of our retail shelves just right there in front of the door, just so people have something nice to look at and it doesn't look like an empty cafe. And I moved all of our retail items there just so people could see that we do have those things. But you'll notice that second poster below, we're only taking orders on our website. So we aren't taking any money in person. Everyone has to go online and pay. And so they just log into our website and they place their order and it pops up on our screen inside. And then there isn't a lot of waiting for that because people can put it in ahead of time. They just come to the door, tell us their name, and we hand out their order. Let's see, next slide maybe. Okay, so this was another way that we decided to spread the word that we were still open, because most places here in Portland have closed, most coffee shops have closed, and so we decided to make a piece of junk mail, which is actually a really cool system. If you're in the States, USPS has a mapping of all the postal routes, and they make it really easy to send out a piece of mail to a neighborhood. And so just in our immediate 1 mile radius, we found out through USPS that there are over 5,000 homes. And so as we were talking about how can we raise sales, who do we want to focus on in raising sales? It's this immediate neighborhood that is walkable or deliverable in our delivery radius. And so we made a piece of junk mail and sent it out just to one postal route. Our immediate postal route had 1,300 homes. And so this is the thing that we send out to those homes. Next slide. This is how we changed our bar. So with online ordering, it's definitely a different bar flow. It is so different not having a line of people and a queue that we take one person at a time. Instead, you have people ordering online, and at one point, 50 people can order at the same time. Our bar is was wide. We had a lot of space, and it was like too many steps. We're like, how can we cut back on walking? Because we don't need this bar anymore. We don't need our pastry case. We don't need anything. So we put tables up. We set up the most efficient way we could possibly stack cups and take orders and like print out the orders. And so you can see that we've completely changed the behind the bar scene there. Next slide. This is our packing station. Because everything is for delivery or to go, we have had to really invest in bags and boxes and all the different types of packaging that you could think of for different situations. So We have smaller bags, we have taller bags, we have really big bags, and a stamp. You can see our stamp there. We're just stamping everything. And having a packing station has become a huge part of what we're doing. You can see our cafe, all the chairs just have boxes. Those are all full of different kinds of bags that we use throughout the day. And we're also a bakery. We also are a restaurant, so we make breakfast, lunch. We have tons of baked goods, and so we just have so many different scenarios that we had to just continuously order different size bags for different situations. Next slide. Okay, so we started offering delivery ourselves within a 1 mile radius, and we were trying to decide what was the best sanitary way to do that. We just wanted our customers to feel comfortable. We wanted to be sure that we were offering something safe. And so this is how we pack orders up to go. So in the bag there, we pack the food and then we tape the bag shut. And then with the drinks, one, they spill in those cups when you're in the car. And so we have to tape all the holes shut so that we don't get a lot of splashing in the car. And then we always pack 2 sanitary gloves inside of the bin because we didn't want our delivery driver to get in their car, touch the door handle, touch the steering wheel, and then touch people's orders. And so what we do is we pack it in that sanitized bin, we put it in the car, and then when they get to the home, we take the lid off, we carefully put on the clean gloves to not contaminate the gloves itself, grab the order and place it on the porch or the front door of the customer. And so we just try to cut down on the cross-contamination in general by what are the best practices. We don't want the order just sitting in the car. And how can we take 4 to 6 orders at a time? We need a stacking system. How can we stack orders? And so these bins allow us, with lids, allow us to stack multiple orders if we have 5, 6 orders to take out. And then we just tape the address on the top. Next slide. Oh, that's it. Cool.
Cool. Thanks for sharing that system. That's amazing. So we'll ask a few questions, but before that, Nick, can you share with us what you all have been doing in San Francisco?
Sure. Thanks for having me on here. I guess I want to start. Here's a slide with a bunch of folks who have essentially followed our lead. We've been publishing on a relatively regular basis, trying to put out there a lot about what we've been doing here in San Francisco and at our Berkeley cafe. And you know, some of them have been folks that we know, some are folks we don't know who have been sending us pictures of their cafes. I do want to start out by and we might get into this more, Peter and Scott, later on. But you know, this is about going to go and like a window service sort of thing. There's a lot to talk about here. I don't want to spend too much time on the sort of other subject, which is like whether you should at all, whether it's the right idea. There's a lot to say about that, and maybe we'll get into it more. I just want to preface though by saying that this is not the solution for everyone. And I think Erica would agree. Like, I think that part of what makes us nervous about even a webinar like this is how it might be seen as like, what do they call it, hustle porn, right? Where it's like, look what we're doing, why can't you do it, you know, kind of thing. If there's one thing that we've all been learning through this is that, you know, what we thought we knew, the rules that applied before don't necessarily apply now. And so I just want to start out by sharing that. So yeah, let's go to the next slide. This is a couple weeks ago at our cafe. I'm actually going to share our sales numbers, not the numbers themselves, but kind of the trend over the past month and a half in a later slide. But I did want to just point out our cafes right now, our 2 cafes, are pretty much close to back to 100% of pre-pandemic sales. And that's something that I say with a little bit of embarrassment, knowing that a lot of cafes have closed, have had to lay people off, that at least our cafes are actually doing really well right now. And there's a few reasons why. The most visible one is that we set up this whole window system. Heather, you can go next slide. That if you look at this image, that there's some things that you can see right away. We've moved the entire service to the front door. No one comes inside. That trash can that's there, we've swapped it out for one that doesn't have a swing top so that there isn't that bit of like sort of touching risk, so to speak, as well. What's a little bit harder to see is that there is a plexiglass screen. Now, those are things that are sort of, I don't want to say ubiquitous, but we're starting to see more and more at stores, is some sort of like protective screen, essentially a glorified sneeze guard sort of concept to try to reduce the idea. I mean, they say 6 feet. Sometimes you can't do 6 feet. And so having sort of a protective barrier that way has been helpful. I mean, again, this isn't about credit or whatever, but I think we were one of the first to, to sort of apply that concept to a takeaway window kind of thing. It's not going to show up in the photos that we have here, but one of the other things that we did was that we didn't, some cafes have chosen, like Erica's, when it's a great choice for her to eliminate all contact. We've reduced it to eliminating all direct contact. The register, we still use Square. We have a Square, one of the fancy register dual screen setups. And one of the things that, the many things that I've had to juggle in my head in terms of designing these systems is how can we maximize tips? Tipping is an awkward conversation, and it's one that I think everyone's familiar with, some of the pros and cons, many of the pros and cons that we're talking about in our culture these days. But the fact is that for me, it's about setting up a system that's going to maximize the income for our baristas. Partly because I feel like it's my responsibility, partly because we don't know how long we can stay open. Circumstances could change where we can't. And so, unfortunately, in our capitalist system, this is sort of what we're stuck with. And so I have always left a signature requirement on our Square. It's a small inconvenience, but it actually increases the tipping at the credit card tipping, and so that's something that I've sort of intentionally kept on as a choice, as a trade-off. Then go to the next slide. This is our Berkeley Cafe window. This one's a little bit more. It was a little easier. Right next to our behind the bar is actually these set of double doors. There are 3 of them total there. But with this one, as you can see, I put a big banner up. This is a newer cafe. We only opened in August. And, our sales aren't meant to be, again, in the interest of transparency, like we haven't been profitable at that cafe yet. We've been like $200 or $300 below profit, like break even consistently at that shop. And so, part of, for everyone who's watching this and listening, building a customer base of your regulars is so important. It's your core of your cafe business, and so we're still building that right over there. And so I was thinking about like how can we draw people in who are driving by, who are walking by. And I realized that whereas before things, certain buzzwords like back in the 90s, like gourmet, or more recently things like pour over or espresso or whatever, depending on your market, might have been a thing that would catch people's eyes. Right now, I could have made it bigger, but those 2 words, contact free, contact free, I felt like was something that if people saw, they would go, oh, okay, like maybe I'll give it a shot. And so we didn't feel the need to put a banner like this up at the other shop because, frankly, again, like it's busy enough to where we're not trying to increase necessarily beyond what we're doing now. But as you can see, this screen is even wider. And so anecdotally, I've been hearing from a lot of folks from around our Bay Area as well as around the country that this window thing is really working really well. That it's not just about the functionality of it. And I've written an article about this idea of like hospitality, during coronavirus, that these setups, the feedback that we're getting from our customers is they feel, I mean, sometimes literally like in tears, like they feel really taken care of by us, that we being their neighborhood cafe, that like, we see the problems that are out there, and that we have come up with solutions that are creative and ultimately, prioritize safety. I've made it clear through the stuff that I've written that in our calculations, and analysis of the whole situation and the risks, that our priority is the safety of our baristas. And we talk about supporting baristas all the time. Sometimes it's more lip service than it is something substantial. In this situation, if the baristas get sick, then we have to close. The baristas being healthy is in of itself, of course, like an important goal. We don't want them to get sick, and God forbid, in some serious way. But beyond that, if someone got sick, even if they recovered pretty quickly and didn't have any, long-lasting consequences, it would be devastating for our business, even more so than the effects that we've been seeing now. And so it's sort of like a multifaceted motivation to really set things up in a rock solid way, so that, like, kind of imagining all the different ways that, we've all been doing this in different ways, right? Like imagining the virus, like how could the virus get in? Can it get in here? Can it get in around, under, over, like all that sort of stuff? Can it get in on my phone? We've all had thoughts about that sort of thing. And so for our business, really looking at the ways that things come in. So we are taking cash. Cash is being handled only in specific locations, like spots, like trays within the cafe, as well as with gloves on only. Cash has really shrunk down. Cash used to be about 30% of our overall sort of like, transactions in dollars wise, and now it's down to like single digit, like 5% or something like that. Tips are up overall, which has been nice to see. That's really been a response from the community, and I think that anyone who's been open will have seen something like that. But again, I think that we've really tried to set things up in this way, and it comes with the territory of specialty coffee and these sort of third wave cafe segment, where we want to we want to give people a quality blank, be it an experience, a coffee, like whatever. But there is sort of the associated messaging, like we want people to see that these things do matter to us. And it just happens that in this situation, those two things are generally one and the same, like we set things up. I guess I forgot to mention, but we also have a little stack next to the cash register of what they call patty paper. They're actually wax paper squares, 5.5 inches, 5.5 by 5.5. They're made for if you make a stack of burgers, the little wax papers in between. And I was able to get those for our cafe and put them next to the register so that people can, and there's a sign that says like, wrap your finger in a wax paper before you use a touch screen, or to use the touch screen. And we jokingly kind of call them finger condoms. But that was something that we definitely didn't see anyone doing. It was a little bit of an innovation on our part, but a way to help people feel protected, maybe even more so than like having zero contact at all. Going straight to like a contactless payment only is something that a lot of people have been doing, and a lot of like Square, I think, has been recommending that. I've consciously and intentionally chose not to do that, mainly again because we wanted to maximize tips, as well as the wrapping the finger thing ends up being this interesting like experience for people. It's new, but once they do it, it's like with a lot of cafes, I think have had a similar sort of dynamic where there's something that is slightly awkward at first, but once you learn it, you're like in, and then you feel like a part of that community. And so, so overall, it works pretty well. We can go to the last slide. Oh, we didn't. Oh, there we go. So I wanted to share. I redacted the dollar figures because it's less relevant, but this is our month of March sales. The yellow arrow, the on the 9th was when I think for, you know, around the country, especially in larger cities, like that was sort of when things, the first sort of stage of things really changing. This was when a lot of cafes were going to the policy of not accepting personal cups, takeaway cups only, to reduce that cross-contamination risk. So that was a Monday, and it was like a relatively normal Monday for us. And so the rest of that week ended up being pretty normal in terms of sales numbers. And then the red arrow is the 16th. That was a Monday, and that was the day when the Bay Area, first in the nation to institute a shelter-in-place order throughout the entire San Francisco Bay Area. We had already done no takeaway cups. We had done the wax paper thing, but just to share, I guess it's okay to share. The baristas who were working that afternoon heard about the order from the local government, and they kind of panicked and shut the shop down without permission. Trish and I went out there to talk to them, and we had a long conversation. It was just a feeling of anxiety and just lack of safety. You know, they said that after they heard the news, the next customer came in, you know, a 24-inch wide counter between them, and just starting to imagine, again, like that we're all familiar with this, is imagining these invisible viruses kind of flying around, and they just didn't feel safe anymore. And so I'd already had the window cafe idea and concept all sort of sketched out in my head as a thing that we might have to go to if things got more serious. And obviously they did. And so when I presented that as an option to them, would you feel safe if we did this with the sneeze guard and everything? And they said that it would be worth a try. And, you know, 3-something weeks later, our baristas have our feedback from them and from baristas from other shops at the other shops that have instituted a similar setup. I think, you know, Erica's as well have all reported back that like they feel like it's a special setup that makes them feel safe. It communicates from management that their safety and health is a priority, and the positive feedback from the customers just makes working, you know, the fear and everything, the nervousness of getting to and from work and everything, it helps sort of balance that out a lot. The 19th, the pink arrow is actually the day when the entire state of California went to shelter in place. And if you notice, like from then on, like things kind of came back to where the last week of March is pretty much comparable to the first week, except for weekends. The weekend business, whereas it used to be almost twice as busy on the weekends, is not quite as much. But the weekdays are actually busier than they were before. And again, we can get more into that in the latter part of this conversation. But again, you know, I have not encountered anyone else, you know, and again, this is awkward, that is back up to close to 100% of prior sales. I think the best I've heard is something around 15-20% down from prior numbers. We have certain reasons why. I think location wise, you know, we're doing as well as we are, but yeah, so happy to share, happy to have a conversation about get more in depth into this.
Thanks. Just a couple more questions for both of you all about what's happening. And this question came from the audience. Has the customer mix changed at all? Are you seeing, you know, your regulars in the coming back, or is this a different group of people? Erica, are these your regulars, or are these different kind of people?
Yeah, it's a mix of people. We share a building with a gym actually, and so we've definitely noticed that regular customers that came to our shop because of the gym are gone. The gym is closed, and we don't see those people. But the regulars that live in the direct neighborhood, we definitely see them every day still. They've still continued coming. But a lot of our customers are actually newer, or they're frequenting our shop more than they used to, because they're not driving to work, they're not commuting anywhere, they're just here in the neighborhood. Our neighborhood in particular, we don't have a lot of shops around us anyway, which is weird for Portland, but now even more so that all the shops are closed, our direct neighborhood is definitely supporting us more, and a lot of them are new faces, and then some of them are regulars too.
Ditto, same.
To follow up with that question too, I'm wondering if both of you have seen some changes in what people are ordering. Has there been shifts in kind of your product mix? And have you changed anything about your product mix to kind of address this situation?
We stopped doing pour over. We were only doing pour over at our San Francisco Union Street Cafe anyway, the one with the white facade. At Berkeley, we weren't doing pour over in the first place, but just because we're serving sort of one customer at a time with maybe 2 people waiting, whereas before we could have a dozen people waiting, like 20 drinks queued up on the bar during busy times. We made the decision to eliminate pour over as an option, except for the times when it's like there's no one else around, and I let the baristas make that call. But otherwise, yeah, same stuff.
Yeah, for us, we did switch it up. So like I said before, we have pastries and breakfast and lunch. And before, we actually only had one roaster. And through this time, we've just seen how our best friends in coffee, their business is all struggling. And so now we carry coffee from 4 different roasters here in town. We're selling tons of retail bags. And so every week now, every roaster's bags have been sold out. And we're kind of sharing the love a little bit with our money. Since our shop is doing pretty well, we're able to support now 4 roasters instead of just 1. And we also noticed that our average ticket went up a lot, because people, when they're on the website, they're ordering online, they're seeing every single item we offer as they're scrolling, and there's way more impulse buy than in person. So we've noticed that on every single sandwich now, there's avocado added, every single one, when before it was only a few. It's like people can't help themselves. They're like, add avocado. Same with espresso. We've gotten way more triple and quad lattes than we ever have before, because people just impulse add on to their lattes. And so our average ticket jumped from like $10 to now $18 to $20 a ticket. Wow. It jumped enormously, because, and also I think people who live in houses with multiple people, they go, oh, we're putting an order for Arrow. Oh, I'll get this sandwich and this latte and this sandwich and this latte. And all of a sudden we're delivering $60 orders to houses. That never happened before, really, except for maybe a weekend. And so I think like that this actually really helped us with some of our sales, where our average ticket definitely went up.
Wow. Yeah. Okay. So that brings up the topic that Nick mentioned before, which has to do with location. I think both of you are in places where they're, I think sort of surrounded by residences, and I reckon that's probably a factor here. So Nick, what did you mean when you were alluding to some locations might be more suited to this than others?
Yeah, location. That's a thing that we've all heard, and you learn, and then you relearn, and then you like sort of come to understand it even better at certain times. There is such a thing as good locations and bad locations, and bad meaning, where you're going to see lower traffic, lower foot traffic, lower sort of eyeballs on you, et cetera, and high traffic areas where there's a lot of commercial activity, et cetera. The definitions and the criteria of what constitutes a good location, I think, have changed. And I think we're all seeing that. Locations that used to be, really high volume in downtown, like here at downtown San Francisco, pretty much across the board, all of those cafes have closed. People aren't going to offices to work. Our 2 cafes, and actually every cafe I've ever had, so something I guess I'm drawn to is being more of like a neighborhood place, being in a commercial corridor or a retail corridor or street, like a main street sort of thing within a neighborhood surrounded by residential. Yeah, and I think that for a lot of places, the idea of foot traffic versus um, like drive-by sort of thing, if you're in a more of a suburban location, um, whether people can see your facade and see your door and see people lined up, I think makes a big difference. Whether or not you have parking available. Right now, we're benefiting from the fact that usually there's like very little parking to find on our street. And then about 3 months ago, the first Shake Shack in San Francisco opened like around the corner from us, and which put additional pressure on parking. With most things closed right now, our walk-up window is almost a drive-up. People can't order from their cars, but there are almost always 3 or 4 spots that are open right out front. So all those sorts of things have kind of like really just jumbled up the idea of what a good location is, which goes to me back to the idea of assessing a location as being a viable place. Because, for the folks who are watching this, I'm going to assume that there's a mix of places or people who either work at or are running places that have closed already or thinking about reopening, have stayed open this whole time and are considering different options, or are in places where shelter-in-place orders are either just now starting or haven't even happened yet, and kind of thinking ahead. And yeah, so I think that the location thing is pretty high on that list of criteria as to making decisions on whether it's worth trying to do something like this or not.
Yeah, I would add to that though, like, again, Nick had made a statement about this kind of being like a hustle porn kind of thing, but we initially dropped like 70%. And although we do have homes around us, we also had tons of businesses for our main source of income, like the gym. The gym is huge. It's full of physical therapists, practitioners, massage therapists. All of those people are gone now. And so initially we dropped 70%. But once we started sending out the mailers, we send out mass emails, we're sending all these things out, then we definitely gained a lot of customers. And my friend owns a shop downtown in Chinatown, and he's definitely seen a drop, but he's still making it. He's still doing it, and he still has customers coming to him to get their coffees too. So I think, depending, but the neighborhood is very nice. Like that helps a lot, but I have seen it work with people who aren't in neighborhoods too.
Yeah, I think with specialty coffee, like the sort of third wave segment, um, part of the what comes with the territory there for us has always been there's a mix of convenience, sort of like you're a convenience business for some and you're a destination business for some. Like some folks are driving or walking past, many, if not dozens of coffee shops to get to yours. Whereas for others, it's like, well, that's the one that's closest to where I live or work or whatever sort of thing. And so, I think location-wise, another thing that's sort of circumstantial right now is the idea that a lot of other coffee shops have closed. There was a Blue Bottle that's 3/4 of a mile away, maybe a mile away from us. San Francisco is a small 7-mile by 7-mile city, so that when they opened 3 years ago, like we definitely saw a dip at the time, but they closed, like a lot of other places around us closed, and so that sort of market that we serve has grown a lot, and in terms of like the geography of it, yeah.
We've been talking a lot about, all the changes that you've implemented into your cafes, and if anything, this has just been a huge moment of changing the way that you look at business. And kind of historically, there's always been a 3-way balance about decision making. There's the staff, there's the ownership, and then there are the customers. And, an interesting question would be, how has that changed during this time period, the balance of those 3 decision makers, and should it change?
I mean, I think for me, the balance has always been the same. I think the way that it expresses that, the way that it sort of expresses itself, or the way that things kind of, manifest in it, I think are, have necessarily changed. Um, but, I think that for us, uh, supporting our baristas has always been our main focus. That's why, we didn't have to open coffee shops, but we could have just been a roastery and do a lot of teaching and all the stuff that Trish and I do. But for us, the cafe part is the part that we really loved, and for us, doing that, only makes sense when you really care about, supporting baristas and all that. And so, like, I think the majority of my energy has actually been in that, like, spending time looking at the schedule and being like, oh, okay, so and so is working. I haven't seen them in a week. I'm gonna go to the cafe at this hour because I want to get some face time and just have a quick chat just to check in. This is a sensitive time. I think that for, again, the folks watching this, there might be examples. So we all have examples, I think, of relationships that that we count on, that have really come through and make us feel good about this time. There've also been a lot of disappointments. Trish and I had a disappointing conversation today with a supplier who seemed to think that if we were late paying a bill, that, like, well, what's wrong with you right now? It's like, what's wrong with us? Like, well, are you looking around? So that's where I think that, being extra intentional about those conversations with our baristas and doing our best every other day, send them messages through our Slack that we use, that they know that we're thinking about their safety and their well-being first and foremost. Yeah, and that in turn ends up helping the customer side of things. And for us, like, we've had to kind of subordinate ourselves, but that's sort of how we usually do stuff anyway.
For my cafe, I think, yeah, the priority is always the people that work for me. The employees are the priority. But that doesn't mean that I'm not the leader still. And something I've realized so much is that I still have to rise above and be the leader. I need to have the answers and the idea and the leadership. And I did present this to the employees and say, all right, here's what we're going to do. Are you on board? How do you feel? And I had one person that takes public transportation, and they said, no, I don't want to do that anymore. I don't want to work anymore. And that's okay. It is a sensitive time, and everyone has to decide for themselves what they want to do. But I still have to have the answers for the customers and for the employees, because everyone is confused and scared, and it's all new and weird. And so I did have to take the time and stay up all night and just be like, what am I going to do? And then for me, I'm here every day right now at my cafe. We have completely changed our business model, and it is hard. Taking online orders is hard. The system is new. The bar flow is different, and it feels scary. And so for me, I'm working my cafe from open to close every day right now to be just as a support for my employees. Even if it's just me, my computer in the cafe, I still want to be there for them. And I want the customers to see the familiar face, and so something that we've done, which is it feels kind of funny, but we've been making really funny Instagram posts. We've been making funny videos as a team. We've been posting silly pictures and just things that we wouldn't normally do, because we're trying to keep hopes high, and we're trying to give everyone a sense of safety and normalcy. And so we're making dancing TikToks and posting them on our business page. And it's a little embarrassing, but at the same time, the thing that we're hearing from the customers is, oh my gosh, I'm so grateful you're here serving our community. You're bringing light and hope to the community. And that also resonates with us as we're working. Feeling stressed. I have little children. This is really stressful and hard, but at the same time, we are keeping our hopes high together as a community by just making some changes, and also myself being the leader, having the answers and taking care of the people around you, this is the time to rise above and to do those things. And so you can't just tell your employees, all right, what are we going to do, guys? Like you have to say, all right, here's the options and here's what I want to do and here's what I think is the right thing. Are you with me? And definitely also hearing feedback with that, but that was really important, I think, for our team.
Yeah. So taking from that, what I heard in that was a lot of what you just said, Erica, was a lot of vision and seeing things from a different perspective from your place, and the recognition that you need to provide leadership. So that makes me think, like, what about the future now? How from that place of vision, how do you think that this might change the way that you operate in the future, and or that, you know, your coffee shop, the role that it might play in the future? Could you maybe think about that a little bit?
Yeah, and that has definitely been on my mind, especially when we throw around this word essential. What is an essential service? Because when you first think about, is coffee essential? No. You know, people are going to say, no, it's not essential. I've heard that being thrown around by other owners, by community. They say coffee's not essential. But as we decided to stay open, and as I look at the future of where we're going, and I hear the feedback from the customers, and also I'm experienced as a stressed person myself, the power that food and beverage can play in a community in a stressful time. And, you know, the first week that all this went down, I got takeout from my favorite restaurant. I got takeout, I took it home, and I ate and I cried because my heart felt so good consuming things that felt close to me and felt right, and was from people that I have a relationship with, that I love and appreciate, and I'm serving them. That changed, like, my heart. I felt it, you know. Yesterday I made chocolate cake. I sold out, and someone posted on Instagram, this is what my soul needed today. And so, yes, I believe my business is essential right now in this time and place in our community. It is essential. And so as I look to the future, I'm going to continue working and serving my community for as long as I'm able to, and in the best way that I can. We're writing little notes on bags to customers. Even though we don't see their face, we drop their order off at the door, they still have some connection with us. I text them when I drop it off, and they text me like a gift back or something. You know, we're still getting our customer interaction in the same, like the same way, but totally different. And as I look to the future, I'm like, it's about connecting with people. It's about being that essential service. And what does it mean to provide value? What is the value that we're providing right now? And that is connection. And that connection comes through ourselves, but also through our food and drink that we're serving.
Yeah, when I think about the future, you know, that just thinking about it is like, you know, your eyes want to roll back in your head, like, oh, okay, who has a crystal ball right now? But there's some things that we want to plan for. I think that there's to sort of lay it out, you know, there's what else could happen during this pandemic situation. I'm wearing my Cafe Grumpy t-shirt, Cafe Grumpy in New York City. They're closed right now. They're multiple cafes. And in a way, like, it's just thinking about New York City right now, and everyone knows that that's the hot spot for this whole health crisis that we're in right now. And in talking to my friends in New York, realizing that, wow, they're dealing with something different than we are here in San Francisco. Like, we have the privilege here on a lot of different levels, and somewhat, you know, in this situation, talk about location, you know, definitions changing. Like, we have the privilege of being a smallish city that has less population density than a place like New York. But a lot of the stuff that we're doing right now, like, let's keep it real. Like, it's not going to work everywhere. It's not even just about location, like good location, bad location we're talking about. Like, it's also certain cities it's not going to fly. We're here in San Francisco. Los Angeles just got yesterday, their mayor said that, you know, they're not changing the rules, so to speak, but they recommended, like, you know, don't go out more than once a week if you can help it. And so I've been on the phone, texting with my friends in LA, like how are things changing with that changing context and situation. We've been thinking about what happens if someone at one of our cafes gets sick, one of our employees. We put together a plan for that. We decided that if someone gets sick, then we close the shop, that whoever can and is well enough to will go in and clean up, top to bottom, like disinfect, and that we would reopen with temporary workers made up of laid off baristas from other cafes. And we've already reached out, and we have a list of people who are kind of on standby for that, if necessary. I think that I've noticed for a lot of folks who, and again, it's the reality of the situation, have, I don't want to use the word panic, but, responded, really quickly and in a almost like a reflexive sort of way, that, something happened, places were closing, we're going to close too, and then we'll figure it out. And I do want to, for the folks who haven't closed yet and are thinking about it and figure, well, we can close and then come back. I would say, like, if you have aspirations to sort of regroup and reopen, try to not close in the first place. We're noticing here in San Francisco and other places in the country that the places that have closed, and especially for a week or two, your customer base has developed a new coffee habit. And you reopening doesn't necessarily mean they're going to come right running back again. Just the way that Erica is experienced, and we have too, where it's like we have some of our regulars from before, but a lot of it's new people because now they're coming to us now. If they were regular somewhere else and that other shop reopened, it's just not how cafe sort of habits work. And so anticipating sort of what would happen, thinking 2 or 3 moves ahead if possible, what you can, and then working back and helping that inform your more current decisions is important. Obviously there's the whole question of the future after the pandemic, whatever the hell over means, when it's over, we don't even know what that means yet. It's pretty clear that we anticipate that the next stage will be some degree of like less, not about shelter in place, but more like let's just keep living. Let's try to reopen stuff, but with social distancing, as a rule of life, for a period of a few more months until there's a vaccine or whatever, and thinking about what that means and how that's going to impact our business. I do think I wanted to just get this out there before I forget, while there's still time, that we're looking at our friends in the restaurant side of the food and beverage industry sector, and realizing that some of our most admired restaurants and restaurateurs and chefs are not able to make it work right now. And because a to-go business is not really a substitute for what they've been doing. I do think that there's some lessons for us coffee people to learn from that, which is if you are going to have a business right now, what makes coffee viable when like a leading Michelin starred chef can't make it work right now, I think it's because not only does coffee travel pretty well, but it doesn't take as long to prepare. So when people are thinking about going and getting something, getting a cup of coffee and taking 5-10 minutes, even if it's going to take 10-15 to have to stand in line 6 feet apart, that's something that people are willing to do and they can wrap their brain around. Whereas, even if it makes sense on your end as a business, when you're thinking about it from the customer experience side, it's not just about what's your cafe window like or what's your cafe experience like. It's also, what is it like to think about going to your cafe? Thinking back a 15, 30, an hour, before you even start your journey to your coffee shop, that's all real estate in people's minds. This is the way I think about these things in general, but now more than ever, these things are really relevant. So that's all part of planning for the future, I think, is, thinking about the different stakeholders, as Scott mentioned, the customers and you as the owner and the baristas, the staff, and just thinking about each sort of stakeholder's experience, like what's it going to be like, And as situations change or look like they could change, like rethinking that and sort of playing that in your head, almost like a role-playing game. Like what's that going to be like? What are they seeing? What are they experiencing? What are they thinking about when they think about us? You know, yeah.
Yeah, I agree with that. Total. Yeah, just to add on real quick to that point is that as you're thinking about to go and delivery and that sort of thing, takeaway, you do have to think about what is the customer's experience right now, because if you make the most perfect latte in the world and it doesn't get to them for 10 minutes because you have to deliver it, what is their experience on the other side of that? When they take that first sip of coffee, it's going to be all foam. You have to think about that sort of thing. And so it's like, okay, do we need to steam the milk a little bit thinner? Just a little bit, because when it gets to them, all of that air rises to the top of the drink and their experience is going to be different. And so you do have to think about that experience that customers are getting a little bit, especially when you're talking about food and beverage, of like, what is on the other side and what are our priorities now? How are they shifting to our bar flow of still providing a good experience for when that latte finally arrives?
Yeah, great points. One thing that's really been kind of hitting me hard is I think a lot of people talk about when will we go back to normal? When will we go back to the way things used to be? And kind of my supposition is that, maybe things will never be like they were. And some of the innovations that, both of you are implementing into your cafes maybe start looking like the cafe of the future. And we're running short on time here, so I'd like to just ask both of you if there's one thing that you've implemented during this time that you think is going to be lasting into the future. What would be that thing that you think is probably going to be here 5 years from now?
Ooh, that's a good question. I think for us, the online ordering is probably not going to go away ever. People being able to order from their house, set their time that they're going to get here to have their order ready. And I've been thinking about that. If the cafe ever were to open, online ordering brings a lot of its own problems. One, there is no line. There is no line for online ordering. People just order at will. And unfortunately fortunately and unfortunately, this last Saturday, 50 people put in their order at the same time. It was terrible. It was one of the worst experiences I've ever had, because currently the systems available is that you program in a wait time depending on what they order, but if 50 people order at the same time, everyone has a 15 to 20 minute wait time. That's just not true when 50 people are waiting, right? And the system has not implemented that queue system where like every additional person adds 5 minutes. It's just everyone gets that 15 to 20 minute wait time. And so it was terrible. Trying to handle 50, then we got an additional 20 after that. So it was like 70 orders that we're trying to figure out how to get out to the people. And so I do think online ordering is here to stay forever. And so just do it. Like it's here to stay. I hope the systems can become better to help really work through a cafe setup or a restaurant setup. But yeah, that's definitely staying.
I think that for me, the thing that really comes to mind is it's less about like a thing. It's more about this has really, for me, been a bittersweet reminder about so what I'm good at. What am I good at? Why do we have the following that we do? Why do I have the reputation I do? All these sorts of things, and realizing that it's less about an idea that we've come up with. It's more about where the ideas came from. In other words, understanding sort of what's our priority, and letting that inform, how we make decisions. For me, I'm just happen to be tuned in a way where I'm always trying to think creatively, like what are the things that are being overlooked right now, like is where my head goes a lot. And that's responsible for a lot about my career and whatever people know me for in the coffee industry. For people on this webinar, I think that the fact that you have tapped into this resource that the SCA is putting out there that is your own competitive advantage in a setting where, and in a context where you need every advantage to have in your arsenal, so that you have some options to tap into as situations change, because again, things are always changing. And so to continue to be able to do that, to stay engaged in that way, I think for everyone watching this, it's like has a different version of that idea, is experiencing a different version of like what it means to fight for your business, fight for your livelihood, fight for your employees and for your community. And so like for me, it's less about technique within that. It's more about like really thinking about the nature of that fight that's in you, and what maybe you've learned about yourself that you're capable of doing, and being able to carry that on to post pandemic. What's that going to look like? And hopefully we're all changed for the better.
That's a great place to leave it. I really appreciate those words, and I really appreciate Erica, you and Nick. Thank you so much for taking time out of your busy day to share with us what you're doing, so much of what you're doing. And I know that both of you have been available on social media to reach out to people and provide leadership. So I just want to thank you both for that, and also for joining us today. And as we close here, another thanks to La Marzocco, who's making this possible, this webinar series possible. I encourage you to join us next week, a week from today, at the same time, when we'll be talking about the next issue, which is communication, which we heard especially Erica talk about earlier. So we're going to be exploring that issue, the importance of communication in these times. But for now, with another thanks to our guests, and on behalf of Scott Callender of La Marzocco and myself, Peter Giuliano from Specialty Coffee Association, thanks for joining us, and stay well.
Be strong, everyone.
Thank you.
Really appreciate it.
Yeah, sorry I couldn't get on the video.